Okay, let's get started. So, hi everybody, and welcome back to our professional development webinar series. Thank you for joining us for our presentation titled Catholics Going Mobile, Opportunities for Evangelization Using Mobile Apps. And I should probably say evangelization and catechesis, because that's a lot of the apps we have present here with us today. As you can see, we're doing something a little bit different. You can actually see us. Hopefully you can see our actual images or pictures as a video feed as well as the presentation. So thanks everybody who are the panelists here for being open to doing that and for being able to kind of have a more of a lively and engaged conversation as we talk about mobile technology. So my name is Jared Dees. I'm the digital publishing specialist at Ave Maria Press, and I'll be the moderator of the presentation and the panel discussion today. I want to say again that this webinar is brought to you exclusively in partnership with the National Conference for Catechetic Leadership, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the National Federation of Priest Councils. Everyone in the audience is muted today, and we're not able to see you as well, but you're able to ask questions by submitting them in the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel. So you can see that displayed here. So find that quickly on your GoToWebinar panel, and if you have a question for the panelists as we're talking today, please do include that and submit it to us, and I'll offer as many as I can today during our discussion after the panelists are able to introduce themselves and their experiences. So that's the technical things. I want to introduce each one of us a little bit specifically, but before I do introduce our panel, I want to just alert everyone to the growth in cell phone and smartphone ownership over the last few years. These are all slides from the recent Pew studies over the last year or so, the Pew Research Center. And here's a slide that just shows that 91% of all Americans now currently own a cell phone as of May 2013, compared to just 65% in 2004. So an incredible growth of cell phone ownership over the last few years. Here you can see that income among younger people is not as much a factor as age. So from 18 to 29, even people in lower income brackets are still owning cell phones, even up to 77%, sometimes over 80% usage compared to age. You know, it's a younger demographic, and economics does not seem to be as much of a factor. As far as platforms choices, we've seen this is probably just by people using different cell phones around the country, our friends and family, etc. iPhone and iOS, of course, around, according to Pew Research, about 25%. Android around 28%, and Android would be, and somebody else could probably say more about this, but Android would be all kinds of different phones, not just the iPhone, but an Android operating system. And then BlackBerry and, of course, Windows are also rounding out the top devices. And something we might talk about, because a lot of you I know are faith formation experts out there. We may get into children and teenagers specifically, because teen cell phone ownership and usage, of course, is absolutely growing tremendously. Here you see almost 40% of teens have cell phones, or have smartphones, excuse me, have smartphones, and about 80% of them have cell phones. So it's rapidly growing, and something that a lot of us are seeing in our parishes and in the people that we're working with in different capacities in ministry. So what I want to do today is, before we're going to have a panel discussion at the end, but I want to introduce each person specifically, or individually, I should say, and help give them the opportunity to talk about what they've done, the apps that they've created, and the experiences that they've had with mobile technology as a form of evangelization and catechesis. So I'm going to start with Sean. Sean's the director of the newly created Office for Evangelization for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. And during his 2-year tenure as the assistant director in the Archdiocesan Office of Evangelization and Catechesis, he acquired a reputation for strongly promoting evangelization in the local church. He holds a master's degree in pastoral ministry and a bachelor's degree in religious studies, both from the University of Dayton. So, Sean, can you please tell us a little bit the story behind Being Catholic, the app that you helped to create for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati?
Yeah, so probably about a little over, almost about 2 years ago now, our Archdiocesan website went through a big update. So we decided to update the webpage. And when we put the webpage through an update, we decided to create this section called Being Catholic. And the idea was that for the diocesan webpage, it's mostly used as a resource for catechetical leaders, for pastors, for principals, for teachers. But we wanted a space on the webpage that could be just direct evangelization using social media, new media tools. That could be kind of our diocesan evangelization tool on the webpage. And so we created this section called Being Catholic, and it eventually developed into a group blog where we've recruited people from across the Archdiocese of Cincinnati to blog about what it means to be Catholic for them. And so we have priests, religious, deacons, lay people, all kind of just sharing their experience in this kind of blogging format. And then we kind of built a social media strategy around this blog. So we have a very active Facebook page and Twitter accounts, and all to kind of drive people to interact on this blog. And it's turned out to be one of the most visited pages on the Archdiocese of Cincinnati webpage. It's bringing a whole new audience in that we hadn't reached before. And so part of this kind of blog was thinking about how we can start getting onto people's mobile phones and people's tablets. Our webpage isn't what you might call responsive design. You can't really access it very well from a smartphone, and you can't really interact very well on it. So that's when we started thinking about how to use mobile apps to kind of support the blog. And so very soon after we launched the Being Catholic blog, we also launched the Being Catholic app. And so the Being Catholic app is both on Android and Apple devices, and it shows the content of the blog, but also has some other unique features. So we have live streaming parish masses from probably about 12 different parishes throughout the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. We have a podcast, a couple podcasts on the app, a prayer wall, and some other things that are kind of unique to the app.
So Sean, I'm just going to ask you a quick clarification question for everybody, and then again, there's questions coming in, so please please continue to send those in. But Sean, so just to backtrack, so this is an content or the blog is on the actual Archdiocesan website. That's where the content's being hosted, right?
Yeah, so the content goes up on a blog on the Archdiocese website, and the app pulls an RSS feed. So every time we post on the blog, it'll also post on the app.
Good, and it's a little bit better reader experience. Is that what you were saying with the responsive design?
Yeah, so you can read it a lot easier on your iPhone as opposed if you were just to go directly to that URL and try to kind of zoom in on the blog on our webpage.
Great. Well, thanks, Sean. I'm looking forward to hearing more during our discussion today.
Thank you.
Okay, Cindy Black is the Director of Youth Ministry for the Diocese of Fort Wayne South Bend. So Cindy is a daughter of God, the Father, sister, friend, bride, and disciple of Jesus Christ, who is devoted to Mary, our Blessed Mother. She's been married to her husband Phil for 21 years and is the mom of an 18-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old son, and one baby in heaven. And Cindy has 15 years of youth ministry experience and a master's degree from the theology from the University of Notre Dame. Go Irish, Cindy.
Yes.
Cindy, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with myyearoffaith.com and the My Year of Faith app?
Sure. Our bishop asked us to really be creative and think about ways to promote the Year of Faith once it was announced by Pope Benedict. And our secretariat really brainstormed and thought about various ideas. And our whole goal was, how do we reach people who we don't already reach? The people who have fallen away, or the people who are, perhaps left the faith or have never been raised with faith. And we thought that if we could put out into the digital deep, so to speak, that we might be able to reach people that we wouldn't normally reach. And we were blessed because little iApps are right in our diocese. And so we thought, let's see if we can make this work, and it has.
Great. So you have a separate website, and the actual an app, which is so two separate things that are going on at the same time. And Patrick, we'll hear from Patrick in a minute, who's a representative from Little iApps, and they developed the app. Did you have somebody else you worked with for the actual website, or did Patrick and the team design that as well?
Well, they designed it to go together, and then as far as like the logo and stuff, we have somebody on our staff that does graphic design, and we laid it out and made the two go hand in hand. And then we have regular contributors to the blog, which our secretariat. Gotcha. It's pretty much a team effort. A lot of us are involved in finding people to contribute and then formatting it. I don't do that side of it. I do the editing. They don't trust me to go into the
That's great,
areas that would allow me to break it. So,
so do you have is it a daily post that you have? It's got to be almost daily, if not daily.
It is daily.
Yeah, that's really incredible.
And we try to draw on the liturgical life of the church. Today there's a post by one of our younger priests who has a particular devotion to St. Therese.
Perfect.
And then we also try to put just try to meet the needs of the church. When the Holy Father asked for the day of prayer and fasting, we tried to quickly shuffle and make sure that we're addressing the current and contemporary issues of the church.
Great, great. Well, Cindy, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to our continued discussion together in just a moment. So Craig Berry was scheduled to be with us, but something came up and he wasn't able to join us. But I'm going to defer to Patrick Leinen, who's here as one of the developers of the Rediscover app. He is with Little iApps. So Patrick, I'll read your bio, and then I'll let you kind of talk about a couple of things, but we'll start with Rediscover. So Patrick Leinen is one of the founders of Little iApps. After graduating from college with a degree in business and psychology, Patrick quickly got his feet wet in the freelance world of web development and search engine optimization. After working for many years as a lead web developer for a Fortune 500 company, he transitioned to work in business and mobile design for Little iApps. So Patrick, thank you for being here. This is not a picture of Patrick, but hopefully you can see his video. Here's a picture of Patrick instead with the logo from Little iApps. But I'm going to switch back because I know this is a picture of Craig, but it shows the Rediscover app, which is what I want to add to our discussion today. So Patrick, can you tell a little bit about the experience with the Rediscover, and maybe, I know it's hard to kind of speak on behalf of the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis, but what they were hoping to get out of it, how they came to you, and what their goals were with the app.
Sure. So I'm going to try to do justice here. The app and website Rediscover, it was a larger project. It was an ongoing initiative by the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis. The idea was to get Catholics involved from their local church and find a way to bring people into embracing Catholicism. So they do that through a multifaceted plan that includes media, that includes website, that includes mobile app, and social networking.
Okay. Good. So as we're asking questions, so Patrick will be able to speak to a little bit of that about their story, I think, and certainly could ask more questions. Can you? As Craig was talking to us yesterday, he was saying that the way that do you remember where they get their content, or can you speak to that a little bit about? Because it's very similar to Sean and Cindy, but they have content on the app and in the website, but where are they getting all that information and all that people?
So that content is provided through the website, but they also have different sources that provide that information. So they have part of Rediscover is their involvement with Matthew Kelly and his book, as well as his information that's on the website. They also work with Father Robert Barron, videos from Word on Fire. Those are also included through the website and through the app and that dynamic media. And the content's constantly being updated and changed as they're going forward. So it's really neat. It's a free app, it's a free website, but they provide it as a service to those in their diocese and also outside of their diocese.
And I should clarify, all of the apps that we've discussed they're all free, right? Everyone's here.
Yep.
And most of the Catholic apps out there. Oh, is my Year of Faith free or not? I can't remember.
It is not.
Oh, it's not. Sorry.
We have a lot of deliberation about that, a lot of discernment about that.
Well, and I don't want to. Can I ask why? Because I think this is really good for the people here to hear the decisions that were made.
The main reasons that we chose to do a minimal charge, it's a 99-cent app, is first of all, so it wouldn't get lost in the free app, you know, the ocean of free apps. And it allowed us to move up on the charts as a paid app and get out in front of people under the lifestyles. You know, I think we got up to #2 in the lifestyle.
I remember that, yeah.
And maybe make people aware that didn't even know that there was a year of faith going on, and maybe pique their curiosity a bit. The other thing is the whole notion of associating a value with it.
I love that.
The research seemed to indicate to us that there wasn't much different in the minds of somebody that was going to be using an app for a year, whether it was 99 cents or free. So it has that value attributed to it.
Thank you. And go ahead, Patrick.
We're an app development company, so we develop a lot of these apps. So some of them are free and some of them are charged, and it's based on a couple of different things, like Cindy said. Like, we know what it takes in the marketplace in order to sort of get your app seen, and there's a lot of free apps. There's actually like a glut of free apps. So sometimes charging 99 cents, as crazy as it sounds, gets your word out better, gets you more reviews, and gets you out there in the public's eye more than others. So like we do free apps like Rediscover's a free app, or Missio, which we did for the Pontifical Mission Societies, that's also free. But we also have apps that we built internally that we charge for, like Confession, because Confession we change every year. We add more features. Like this last time around, we had foreign languages. We had to go pay for those translations and stuff. So it just depends on the app and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
What you have.
And I think it's good to clarify that the decisions you're making are mostly, and not so much as a revenue generating, you know, product, but as like this is a way to get it seen more and to have kind of add a little more value, or perceived value at least, with the app, as opposed to kind of being lost in that sea of free apps. So I think that's I think a good lesson learned here, that there's a good, it's worth talking about, at least if you're developing something, or whether or not you want to make it free versus paid, not just to assume that free is the way to go. So good, very good. We have a lot of questions coming in. I want to get to those in just a minute here. Patrick, before I do, would you like to say anything else about Little iApps and what you've done? You mentioned Confession. You worked on My Year of Faith and Rediscover. Any other words of wisdom from an actual app development company? We may be leaning towards you in a lot of questions we have today.
No, I mean, just quick about our company. We're a small company. We're in South Bend, Indiana. We're a mobile application development company, so we build for Catholic Church. We build for colleges. We build for businesses. We build for a plethora of different companies and individuals. So we've got a pretty broad range and understanding. We build mostly for iOS and Android. iOS is iPhone and iPad, and then Android includes the phones. It includes, you were mentioning earlier, it's also like tablets like the Nook and the Kindle Fire and all of those. And we also do a little bit of web development too, so we can do the back-end stuff. We're really just like, the guys who founded the company, we're like three nerdy Catholic guys who do tech development. Is really what it is. And it's down to it, so.
Three nerdy Catholic guys. That's where things that all start.
T-shirt, I think. Yeah.
Okay, I want to get to, and thanks, Patrick, so much, and thanks everybody for being here, and I'm excited about the discussion. We've got a number of questions coming in. I have a few questions before we take those. I have a few questions from some people that emailed them in, some of the people that are kind of maybe known very well in the Catholic app world or Catholic social media world. So I'll throw them at you. Tom Lelio, or Lelio, I'm sorry, Tom, if you're here and I'm mispronouncing your name, but he's the founder of CatholicApps.com, which is a website with lots of reviews of mobile applications. He's curious if anyone could share what resources you've used to build a mobile app. Patrick, I'll come to you for that in a minute. And also, the second question he had was about budgets. So first, Patrick, I want to pose this to you about what was used to build the mobile. What are you using to build mobile apps, or what could people use instead of what you're doing as kind of the expert? And then Sean, I'll come to you to hear kind of what your path was. But Patrick, go ahead. What are some suggestions for dioceses and parishes out there?
It depends on the complexity of the app. We build using Xcode for iOS, and we use the software also for Android to build specifically for that. We do like design stuff in Photoshop and everything else. There are alternatives out there if need be. If you're looking for a simple app, there's some software that you can actually pay to be a part of in order to get your apps developed. We tend to work with sort of like higher end apps that involve like a lot of programming on the back end. So if you need assistance with that, it's good to go out and shop for programmers, and you can reach out to us. So we work with like a plethora of software that we want to go to build it.
Great. Okay. So, and then Sean, what was the route that you took? Is it? I mean, Cindy worked with little iApps, and you all knew each other. Sean, what was the route you took? Did you found a developer, obviously, and how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, this probably would answer both questions. We didn't have a big budget, so we just knew that we wanted to get into the app world, and so we started looking around at something that could someone we could work with that would give us something that could work with our budget, and we went with a company called Roar App, so ROAR App, and they work mostly with Protestant churches, and so one of their biggest clients is T.D. Jakes, the televangelist, and so what they try to do is create they don't focus on creating custom apps. What they did is they create a platform in which they could make it available to people to input their own information on. And so it works really well for parishes that have already have generated content and they want to try to get it into a mobile app. And that's kind of how it played out for us. So the nice part about it is it's kind of very flexible in that any information that we can get in an RSS feed, we can plug in right away and have it go through our app. And so I can change things from day to day. I can add things. I can take things off based on what people are using, what people aren't using. I can, if I don't like the way it looks, I can try to change it up, and it's all kind of automatic. I don't have to work through the company I'm working with to get those changes made. And so it's very flexible in that way, and it's very inexpensive. It's just a startup fee for them to launch the app, and then a very low monthly fee that you have to pay. But the downside of it is it's not a custom app, and so it kind of it lives and dies based on what content I decide to put into it, what kind of graphic design, what kind of pictures I can come up in, what kind of layout, what kind of color scheme. I have to do all that work on my end. And so while it gives you a lot of flexibility, it doesn't have necessarily it's not as custom and as complicated as something that would be custom built. And so there's like specific categories in which I can pick from to have on the app. So I can feed a blog into it. I can have location finder in it. I can collect donations, have contacts, do live streaming. There's lots of options, but they're limited options. So it's not like the sky's the limit for me. I have to kind of work within the framework that they've given me.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And
go ahead, Patrick.
Speaking of budgets, because I didn't mention budgets, the budget of an app depends on the size of the app. So if you have a smaller idea, like something that's just like static text, chances are you're probably looking at low figures. You're looking at thousands of dollars. And the more complexity you add, the higher the price gets. So if you want something like geolocation and dynamic content and all that other stuff, it just kind of piles up. So I mean, if you're looking for suggestion, my big thing is always sort of start small and build from there. I mean, we started a lot of our apps where they were just like tiny little programs, and we just keep adding to them and adding to them, and they become more and more of a value, and they kind of go on and on. So
maybe, I'm not the expert here, but maybe you're saying is make a list of all the different features you might want to include, and then start to focus on the ones that are the most important when you're coming to a developer. Patrick, when someone's approaching you, what's the kind of the most effective way that people can approach a developer to request for some help? What are some ways that they can really get their message across, really get kind of a good answer right away with what you could do and not do?
Really focusing on key features is usually the first thing. So a lot of times you'll get somebody who comes to you and they might have this enormous idea, right? Like, I want an app where it will tell me where everything's at in the grocery store. Well, that's huge. Like, that's massive. Perhaps we could scale that back a little bit to something like 2 or 3 or 4 key components that we know we can be able to do, keep it in a modest budget, and still give something that's of value to people. As far as dioceses and parishes are concerned, we've been kind of toying around with this idea of finding a way through a diocesan level rolling things out to parishes, and we're sort of still in the talking phases about that. But just know, like, on the back end, guys like us are really trying to make that happen. It's a matter of sort of dealing with the politics and finances and all the other situations. So.
Cindy, when you sat down together as a team and you were trying to decide, you wanted to do something with My Year of Faith, was there like a big dream of like all the different things you wanted to do? How did you focus in your brainstorming onto this kind of the final product and what you wanted to create?
Well, we just kept in mind what are some things for the app, like kind of added on things that you can't just get from the blog.
Yeah.
Ways to like personalize it, to customize it, maybe doing alerts for specific prayers. The Holy Father asked us to pray the Creed each day.
Yeah.
So being able to incorporate those types of things. And really, it ended up being more than I had even anticipated, because I was very limited in my knowledge of what was even possible. So little I had ideas that they brought to the table for us that even the team hadn't imagined, which was one of the benefits of having, faithful Catholics designing our particular app, is that they know the church and they know the richness of the faith and know what the secular world and what what people out there, the obstacles in living the faith. So they were able to bring ideas for that.
And a lot of people are asking about costs. Sean, I don't know if I don't want to put you on the spot, but you mentioned there was an upfront cost and a monthly cost. If you're not comfortable sharing what that is, that's fine. But people are asking. Do you have any idea, like ballpark figures?
When we worked with them, they were doing. They were really trying to reach out to nonprofits. So right now what they say is they will launch your app in Android and in Apple iOS and for $1,000. So that's an initial fee of $1,000, and then it's a $50 monthly fee. And so when we got on it, they were really, and they might do this again, they're really pushing to get into nonprofits and churches. And so they were giving people, they were launching it for free. And so they were saying, we'll waive that $1,000 startup fee, and then just do the $50 a month fee.
That's great.
And so I don't know if they're going to do that again, but that was a really good deal that we decided to jump on.
Sure. And Patrick, you kind of said this already, but it sounds like it really depends on the features that you want to include to really, give somebody a number probably.
Right, like so static text stuff is typically,
Sure.
You could be at the low end of maybe 5K. And then if you get into really complex software, you're going up and up and up based on things that are being added to it. So it's to scale by what exactly you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Great. Okay, I'm going to go to Lisa Hendy, who had a question. Lisa says, this is typical Lisa, right? Always worrying about the people in the pews. How do you embrace the trend towards mobile communications without leaving behind our parishioners who may not? I don't. She's not being critical here, but I just think it's just a great question that I think a lot of people want to know. Is how do you make sure that we're not leaving behind our parishioners who may not have digital access, either due to economic difficulties or personal choice? Sean and Cindy, what are your thoughts on this? How do you continue to reach out to the people who may not have smartphones?
Well, our particular app is linked with our blog,
Good point,
so
yeah.
the content is available for free by the internet. So,
Yeah.
Anyone can access that at a library or wherever they usually go online.
Great, Sean.
I think you might even turn that question around and say that a lot of times we put a lot of focus into our web page and how that, and we figure most people are going to use it that way. But I think one of the slides you just showed us show that the highest number of people accessing the internet are actually lower income people, younger and lower income people. And so the way I tend to think about it is, it's almost like a preferential option for the poor. If most of the lower income people the way they're getting our content is through their phones. And so it's almost a shame if we weren't thinking about how we are using mobile apps to reach that audience, because more than likely, if they're going to find our content, it's going to be through their mobile phone.
So you're saying they're using their phones more, or that they don't even have computers necessarily at home. They're just using their mobile apps. That's a great point. Yeah,
a lot of them just use their phones to access the internet.
Great. Okay, good. Good. I think these are great. So thank you very much. I'm going to go to the next question. Then because we have a lot of questions coming in. I reached out to Kevin Cotter, who's also kind of in this world as well. He works for Focus, the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, and he was behind popealarm.com. And he's a question that I think a lot of people are also echoing that are participating today. He says that once they have the app, what are some of the best practices to ensure that people come back and use it on a regular basis? In other words, how do we move from, wow, that's a cool app, I'll download that, to I use that app all the time? Patrick, let's start with you, and then maybe we can hear from Cindy and Sean as well what they've done.
Well, first I'd suggest there's a book by Josh Clark. It's called Tap Worthy. It's phenomenal. It's about the idea of
what was the title again? I'm sorry,
Tap Worthy. It's by
Tap Worthy.
Josh Clark. Yeah. And the idea is that, what's the difference between, an app that's okay and an app that people use on a daily occurrence or frequently, which is, the reality is there's a couple different things that you have to do. Of the apps that are on a phone, maybe 5-10% get used regularly. So how do you become that person who gets recognized and used over and over again? It has to do with a lot of things. It has to do with content generation. You have to have something that people are going to come back to, and you have to find a way to entice them to come back. You can do this through many different ways. So an example through Rediscover is, outside of the content that we provide for them, we also allow parishioners in the Diocese of St. Paul to search for their local parish to make a favorite and to be reminded of Mass times, adoration times, confession times. Confession does that too. The Confession app, we have a thing where after you finish confession, you can set a push notification reminder so it reminds you to go back to confession and open the app and reuse it again. So you have to find a way to make value for people. If it's static content, if it's something that they can really get somewhere else, chances are they may just get it from there. They may not come back. So finding a way in order to engage people, to allow them to interact, makes a big difference in how useful an app actually is.
Great. And what, Sean, we were talking about earlier, what would you suggest as far as being
one thing I would add is find a way to get really good analytics on the app. And so that's really how I can decide, I can see how many people are using the app, how often they're using it, and what they're using it for. And it's helped me kind of rearrange things and highlight things that I know people are using. So for instance, on our app, I'm able to tell that most of our people use the app for our live streaming of masses. That gets used probably more than anything on our app is the live streaming of and we get stories of people overseas, serving the military who will tune in and watch Mass at their home parish.
Yeah.
So that's a value for them. Or they can't come in for their kid for a relative's baptism, and so they tune in for that. So that's a real value for them. And then we have this kind of updated content like our podcasts and our blog that is updated regularly, so that gets used a lot. But we use a service called Countly. It's Countly, Countly, and it provides mobile app analytics that's really detailed. So it shows me how many people have downloaded it, how often they're coming back from, what part of the world they're coming from, how long they're spending on the app. All types of really good analytics that help me kind of shape it as I move forward.
Cindy, what has the diocese done? I kind of know the answer to this, being in the same diocese, but what have you all done to promote myyearoffaith.com and the My Year of Faith app? What are some of the efforts you've done?
Well, first of all, we've tried to have a variety of contributors to tap into their circle of followers, like Lisa Hendy, who posed the last question, and Steve Gershom. So trying to hit different segments of where people are already going for faith information. The other thing is tagging people that we know that the information relates to by social media through Facebook and Twitter, so in hopes that they will also share it with their circle of friends and it will spread. And then we also met with principals and catechists and showed how it can be utilized in the classroom.
That's a great idea.
It's a fun tool to pull up on on their whiteboards and show the saint of the day and a little reflection, sometimes from somebody right in our own diocese, sometimes from somebody outside.
I love it. I think it's a great method is reaching out to people who are influencers that already have an audience, so when they're posting to the website, they can share with their pages or email lists or whatever else. Hey, I wrote here today. And even some pastors, I was saying this, our pastor, or assistant, or associate pastor, he said, it was a couple weeks ago, and he said, hey, you can read this homily at myyearoffaith.com. So it's a nice little plug even in the pulpit for you all. Thanks, Cindy. Okay, I'm going to turn to the questions here that are coming in. We have all kinds of questions, and I already know that there's going to be more that I can that we can necessarily cover today. So a number of them. So John has a great question about. So Patrick, you mentioned a minute ago push notifications. How do you balance between setting up push notifications and just being annoying with kind of the updates?
For the most part, you have people volunteer for what they want to get push notified for, and a lot of times it's sort of built into the software. So we'll say, like we have a rating system where if you use the app more than 3 times, then it asks you to review it instead of just like asking you 20 questions before you can actually get started with anything. It's just a matter of balance and respecting people's privacy. But again, a lot of that's sort of baked into the software, so we don't have to consider it that much. We just have to sit there and decide, okay, how often do we want to annoy people? And the idea is not to be annoying, it's to give people content that they want. So finding that right sort of happy medium for the most part. I know a lot of people, if you're like me and you've got a bunch of apps, you get like notified all the time, and it can get a little inundated. But for the most part, we don't really get that much with our apps. We've never really gotten any complaints because most of the things are people that people just to sign up for or agree to or are looking for anyway. So,
great point. Okay, Sue would like to know about maintenance. How much time needs to be committed to maintaining a simple app? Excuse me. She wants to know if it's something that a parish minister could do a few hours a week, or what are your experiences? Sean and then Cindy. Sean, what's your experience been as far as maintenance with the app?
Once you get it looking the way you want, at least with the platform I'm using, it's really plug in and go. And so if let's say you have a parish blog that you can grab an RSS feed out of, once you plug it in there, you don't have to do anything. It automatically updates. If you have a podcast that has an RSS feed, you plug it in there, you don't have to update it anyway. So it's completely driven by RSS feed. And so every time content is updated in that feed, it'll update in the app. And so really a lot of time is at the front end where you're kind of building some of the static content and uploading images and making it look the way you want to look. But after that, I don't spend, I don't even spend an hour a week usually with the app after I've plugged in the content that I want.
So there's kind of 2 things going on. There's like the maintenance, which seems to be pretty low maintenance as far as the app itself, updating the app, because it's all worked through the blog. So there's kind of the content creation time, and then there's the maintenance time. Sure. It sounds like the maintenance time is not very much. Cindy, can you talk? You said you were editing a little bit some of the posts that were coming in. In general, from the office, how much time is being dedicated on a daily or weekly basis, would you say?
Well, because we have different content every single day, I'd say we probably devote about 4 or 5 hours a week just to formatting the content. But all of us on board, it's really hard to calculate because we're thinking ahead about, what we want our calendar and content to look like, and then who is the best person to ask for this, and then waiting for a response. So ours is fairly involved, but we knew that going into it, that with it being the My Year of Faith, that we were going to have different content each and every day. And we will be celebrating on the Feast of Christ the King.
I'm going to ask you, somebody already asked the question I'd like to know as well, is what to do after November, but I'm going to come back to that later on. Patrick, can you offer anything, any other, from your clients, their experience, how much maintenance are they're putting into it, like for Rediscover, for example?
Most of the work is done on the front end, just getting it up and running. And once it's kind of up and going, it's a matter of, making sure it doesn't break down when there's an update to an operating system. Like we just had Apple update to iOS 7. We had like a hiccup with Confession, and all the other ones were fine. So like a good example would be Missio, which we built for the Pontifical Mission Society. Theirs is a news feed, so it pulls from Pontifical Mission News, it pulls video, it pulls from, I believe, news.va. So once we set it up and it was running, it's going to pull that content automatically. I don't have to sit here and worry about it every day. It's sort of like, it's running on its own, move on to the next thing.
Gotcha.
So it just depends. So mostly if it's up and running, it's up and running. But it becomes, exponentially cheaper once you get something running, because then it's a matter of just going in there and adding a feature or changing something. So.
Good. So we have a number of questions about content, so that other side of things. Sean, can you go into a little more detail about how that operates? I mean, do you go out and actively recruit people to do content? Was the blog already a thing that's going on? And how about the podcast?
Yeah,
who's doing the podcast?
Yeah, we have 2 podcasts on our app, and it's one is a Year of Faith podcast in which we had Father Rob Jack, who's a local pastor, gave a couple talks concerning the Year of Faith, and so we have that up there. It's not updated regularly, but we do have a podcast that's updated regularly. It's called our Ite Missa Est podcast, and it's a local pastor who has a very active adult faith formation program, very active in social media, and it's his weekly homilies he records and we put up as a podcast. So that's part of that content. We have our bloggers that blog for us. We've recruited throughout our Archdiocese, and so they will typically give us content every 2 weeks or once a month, and we have enough contributors lined up that we have something just about every day of the week to post on our blog. And so when we post something on our blog, it goes up in the app as well. And then we work with a local company called Maximum Media, who does our live streaming for us. And so they go in and set up high-def webcams in parishes and sets them up so it automatically records their masses. And that's and so whenever they get another parish in our diocese, we add them to our app. And that gives us some ongoing content.
And we had a panel in the spring about kind of mobile or web in general, and Domenico Bettinelli from Boston said the same thing. They use a company to do the live streaming. That's been a huge thing for them. They said that for the same reasons Sean you mentioned, is that if people who are in the military, if your families, they can't come to a baptism or first communion, they're able to live stream the masses. So it's really just an incredible, I think, gift to the church. So, Cindy, we have some questions specifically for you about how you were able to recruit people to create the content. What are some of the ways that you reached out to people to get them on board?
Persistence. We just looked at the blogs that we follow and tried to find out the best ways to reach them, and we were really warmly received by everyone that we contacted. Now, some people had a lot on their plate. We didn't get Father Robert Barron to write for us.
Sure.
He was in the midst of his latest project and doing a lot of travel.
Yeah, what could that have been, I wonder.
Oh,
hey, Craig.
Craig.
Hello.
I'm sorry, I may have miscommunicated time. This is the Central Time, Eastern Time bug, and I'm sure many people here are also having that same experience. So,
yes.
Thanks for being with us.
Time. My pleasure.
Cindy, I'm sorry we interrupted. What else? So, Father, you were reaching out to people. Were you emailing them? Were you calling them on the phone? What were some of the ways you found people to get?
Mostly by email, because then they could get to it when they could. We would just send them a link to My Year of Faith so that they could go look and see what we were doing. And then oftentimes it was because of a particular topic that we were interested in having them write. So acknowledging a certain expertise or a certain devotion that we were familiar that they had, and then drawing on that.
Craig, we're talking about content creation. So the question was asked about maintenance. There was the kind of the maintenance side of things of the actual app itself, and then there's the actual content creation that's going and feeding into the app. First, Craig, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement with Rediscover and the Archdiocese, and then maybe we'll pose that question to you about content.
Sure. My name again is Craig Berry. Been with the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis for a number of years. I'm now a freelance consultant with them, but I was helping them with the Little iApps app for our Rediscover Catechesis initiative. And a big piece of that app revolved around getting content for it. A lot of it was from Father Barron, from Matthew Kelly, and a lot of already existing content. We are now starting to trickle in some of our own content, but we did go through a big content curation phase where we went out and found the best we could of a lot of different sources of information. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. There's already a lot of stuff out there. It's just a matter of finding it, pulling it together. We had to vet it, had to sign off on everything before we posted it, but that saved us a lot of time to do it that way.
I love what you said there about being content curators as opposed to creators, and that's a great way. I think a lot of parishes, people are saying, how much time is this going to take? But there's so much content out there on the web, but to be able to package it in a way that's going to be fed to people in a very efficient way, I think that's great, and that's a testament to what you've all been doing. Come back to you in a minute, Craig. Cindy, go ahead and share.
I also wanted to say that we draw content from church documents. We had correspondence with the Vatican to get permission. We thought that maybe readers who would be reluctant to download a whole encyclical or a whole pastoral letter might actually, if we just put little excerpts that relate to a particular topic, that might lead them to actually know that they're not as scary or theologically impossible as they might seem.
That's awesome. Great. Patrick, you wanted to say something earlier too, and I'm sorry I maybe cut you off. Do you remember what you were going to say about content in general?
As far as content that we pull, a lot of times it comes from the web.
Okay.
If the person if this might be a little nerdy, but if you run a content management system, a Drupal, a WordPress, you have XML, and we get JSON data. That data can be pulled and used inside apps. So that's just a nerdy answer, real quick. So.
And Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, one more thing about the content. Cindy reminded me with the Vatican stuff. We also pulled a lot in from the USCCB. Obviously we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but you do have to get permissions. So always contact folks beforehand. Some others may have run into cases where they didn't get pre-approval and heard about it later, and just want to save you that grief, and definitely look to get the approval beforehand. So,
that applies to the Bible, to catechism, to documents.
The catechism was a big one for us because we did pull that in.
Sure, absolutely.
But there are alternatives.
Yeah. If you don't know, ask your bishop, and they will get you in touch with the person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's ISIL or the USCCB or anybody, they'll let you know. So.
And ISIL, for those of you, ISIL is for the liturgical text. If you're also interested in bringing in the Roman Missal, that would be the people to contact. So yeah, there's many offices you can talk with and work with to be able to get permissions. And a lot of times they can be very good about things as long as they know they're clear on what you're using it for and how you're using it. Craig, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the one thing to note on the catechism, we found out to use that content, the USCCB doesn't actually have permission to release that information. They have to go to the Vatican to get that approval. So what we ended up doing is going. So what we ended up doing is they did something a few years ago called the Adult Catechism. It's kind of a slimmed down version, and that they do have approval to sign off on, if you will. So if you are looking to use the catechism, that one's a little trickier to get through the hoops on.
Good. Okay, I'm going to go back to some of the questions we have coming up here. Actually, we have questions about streaming. Sean, do you have how much does the streaming cost? What are people looking at for that? The video streaming.
That's a good question. So the parishes have to. It's a subscription fee as well. So I think they try to keep it pretty competitive, where they will house all of that on their server, and it just you have to, I think, purchase the webcam, and they'll come in and set it up for you. Put a program on your computer so they can set up the timing for it, and so I think that there's some initial setup cost to it. And then I think a pretty manageable monthly fee for it. But I'm not exactly sure how much that costs.
Okay.
But if you want to check it out, it's Maximum Media and MaximumMedia.com, and their service is called StreamSpot.
Okay. And just to review, a couple of people asked this as well of you, Sean. Was it Roar, like Lion Roar? Is that the company's name? Okay, Roar.
Roar, yeah.
That's what you use for
like Lion Roar. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's RoarApp.com.
Okay. We have a great question from Charlotte. She's, and I'll paraphrase, basically she's asking about the difference between creating an app for fallen away Catholics versus engaged Catholics. How, for many of you, how did you tailor the content or the creation of the app to make sure that you're not just kind of preaching to the choir, so to say, like you're reaching the people who are, you're doing some new evangelization, you're reaching out to the people who are maybe fallen away or on the fence. Cindy, how about you? Because that was kind of your initial task, right, for the Year of Faith. What's your been experience of reaching the people who are fallen away?
Well, like we said, that is one of the pushing factors to doing a charge, the 99 cents, so that we could be on the charts, and anytime somebody looks at like the top 10 or something, that we could perhaps get in front of them. The other thing is talking about the issues that, well, we started this before Pope Francis, but some of the things Pope Francis is talking about, some of the more difficult teachings of our faith, and just being on the forefront of them, and then encouraging people to share stories, you know, that God's love has no boundaries, that He loves, and He loves every person that He created, and we tried to show that the Church really does try to uphold the dignity of every person.
So the content you're creating is, so it's non-threatening in a sense. It's not like it's a, you know.
Right, and a lot of it's personal stories, and if we can share how somebody else came to the faith or came to understand certain things about the faith, then hopefully it'll resonate in the hearts of those who might read it. But that has been one of the challenges, and actually we really don't even know. The month of November is going to be slotted for people to share stories about how the Year of Faith impacted them, not just our blog and app, but we want to hear stories about, you know, what did the Holy Spirit do in the hearts of people to bring them back. So hopefully I'll have more to share
I love that.
At the end.
Craig, it seems to me that Rediscover is kind of a part of a larger initiative in the diocese, or Archdiocese, excuse me. What would you say is kind of going on as a whole, you know, including the app, to reach, to kind of do the new evangelization?
Yeah, that was actually a very big component of this entire initiative, and the app is really only one piece of it. And what we had done, we had actually worked with Matthew Kelly. He had done an enormous amount of research in this area of trying to reach out to either fallen away Catholics or non-Catholics, and we made the decision early on that we weren't going to try to focus on non-Catholics or those that had never been Catholic, because they require a little bit different approach, and also those that may have ill feelings or ill will towards the Church. There's just a different pastoral approach to that. So we took it more for people that were maybe Catholic, or they're somewhat engaged. They may go to Mass every week, they may not. It's just a whole different mindset and a communication strategy for those groups, and we broke it down into 4 different groups. So what that did is it directed our content. So like if we have a website called rediscover-faith.org, and we've got tons of content here, but it's geared specifically towards these people. So we kind of break down topics like, who is God? Why does God matter to me? And then we break it down further. Why do we believe in God? And we put them into little bite-sized chunks. You know, basically the way people might Google something. Why do we believe in God? What does it mean to be made in the image of God? So we took a big list of all these very, I don't want to say simple questions, but common ones that people that are just not really schooled in their faith or need to have a deeper understanding of the faith. And that really formed all of our content, and continues to be. So this is part of the app, is part of one piece of that whole picture.
I love that. I love that you were so focused on, you made a decision, this is not for everybody. This is for a certain group, and you're calling it, this is something that's doing catechesis in addition to just evangelization. So thanks, Craig. That was very helpful. Patrick, you had something to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to quickly add, which is that, you know, something that we've run into with the mobile applications and mobile in general is people are willing to share a lot with these devices in a lot of ways that they aren't normally willing to do, and there's sort of an attachment to it. So if you want to reach people from where they're at, there's no better place to do it than their mobile device. Because the reality is that that's kind of where the eyes are at. That's where everybody's going. And I know I talked about this yesterday, which is my big soapbox is always, if St. Paul was alive today, he'd be online and he'd be trying to reach people, because it's this giant social network where, you can reach out in a way that has never been done before and reach swaths of people with great ideas. It's just a matter of getting that kind of content out there in a way that people will recognize it and would seek it out and enjoy it. So.
Good, I love that. I love that analogy. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying the kind of our approach was using people's real life stories. So how do we let people share their stories, like Cindy was saying, and really what we try to do is just grab local people that we felt like other people in our diocese could relate to. So, a pastor, a religious person, or just a regular lay person, just have them tell their story about how they're living their Catholic faith, how they're discovering their faith, how they're living their faith, how they're expressing their faith. And those are our most popular posts on our blog, when someone really just shares a very simple, personal story about how they applied their faith to a situation in their life. Gets more interaction, more sharing on social networking than kind of our big, high, lofty, catechetical posts that we put up there. And so that's kind of the approach we're taking, is really who are the local people that we can highlight and have them really just kind of witness and share their stories, and then try to create conversations online.
I love that. I think that's a great distinction as far as going back to the content idea, is making sure that the content's not just doctrines, but it's also that sharing a witness or sharing an encounter with Christ, and that's how we are able to share the faith. Craig, go ahead.
Just to add on to that, one thing that's unique to our app that little iApps help put together is we have a section called My Faith Life. So it's not just we're pushing content, we are pushing content. However, we're trying to make it interactive, so it's got a list of all the parishes and geolocating, so they can find the nearest parish, mass time, and all that. Then they can click a button and says, "This is my parish," so they can quickly and easily go back to it. But they can also put in goals for themselves, like to go to confession or to read some sacred scripture. They can actually customize the app to them specifically. And like Patrick was talking about, this is how people are communicating now, and making it as personalized as possible. It was a little bit of extra work and cost, obviously, but it gives them more opportunity to engage and actually start using it, as opposed to just receiving information. They can start interacting with it, and it's been well received.
That's great. Thank you. One final question in just a minute, but Cindy, 3 or 4 people have asked now what you're going to do with My Year of Faith after the Year of Faith ends next month, and already next month, it's in October, so November is when the year is over. What's the plan, if there is one?
If you have great ideas, email me Slack. That's really what we've been so busy keeping up on the content. Sure. And everything, that we keep saying we need to talk about now what next. So I'm not sure what will happen to it. We want to make use of it somehow. A lot of people shared a lot of good things, and we want to make sure that it's available on an ongoing basis, especially for catechists and for people to continue to share.
Good. So kind of a final question, I guess, because all of you are representing more or less a diocese, and a few people have asked this in the questions. Is there any reason to think that a parish couldn't do this on its own? It would be great if every diocese had this kind of initiative, but is there any reason to think that a parish couldn't kind of take on this project? What do you think, Sean? And then
I think it's very doable, especially the platform that I'm using. If you already have content like if you already have a blog on your parish website, or if you're thinking about doing that, if you already maybe record your homilies, or you're doing live streaming, all of that is the platform I'm using, it's very simple just to plug it in, and it'll update itself. And so I think it's very doable. And I think every parish should think about how they get on mobile devices, whether it's through a mobile app or a responsive design website. They have to ask themselves that question.
Good. Anybody else want to go ahead, Cindy?
I think we have to find ways. People have their phone with them all the time. I'm getting to the age where I actually need to wear reading glasses, And I thought, how am I going to remember to carry my reading glasses? There should be an app for that because I always have my phone, and lo and behold, there are lots of reading glasses apps. Haven't found one I like yet, but people have their phone with them, and it's getting more and more prevalent. My mother-in-law, who swore she would never have a telephone now, or have a cell phone, now has one. So I think we need to be there where the people are and be willing to take the gospel message and what's going on in our local church.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Patrick.
To follow up with what Sean said, which is that mobile responsive website is a really good, affordable way for parishes on a local level to make their content available on mobile devices without having to go the route of an app. I mean, it's an option that's always out there, and depending on how your content is created, that's an affordable solution to provide that content to your mobile users.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I would just say I know it's difficult for organizations smaller than a diocese or an archdiocese, but where there's a will, there's a way. Here's the thing, and I'm sure you probably touched on this earlier before I got there here, but the amount of traffic on mobile devices is astounding, and it is not going down. I look at we're getting around 250,000 visitors a month on our websites, and number 2 device is a smartphone for that. So it's enormous, the amount of traffic coming from there, and so you really have to factor that in. And I don't know if you talked about mobile responsive at what depth, but just people know that is kind of the new standard, is mobile responsive. When you build your new site or update your website, definitely ask for that feature.
I know that we're going over time a little bit, but Craig, maybe I'll point it towards you. Can you explain to people what mobile responsive design is? I think we're kind of familiar, but a lot of people probably are not.
Yeah, the real short 60-second is, in the old days you had to build a whole new website for mobile devices, and it cost a lot of money and time, and you always had to update it, and you effectively had 2 websites, your regular website and your mobile website. Well, now with mobile responsive, you build one website that based on the size of the screen you're looking on. If it's on a computer screen, it looks like this, and if you're on a tablet, it kind of shrinks accordingly. It doesn't get really tiny so you can't read. It actually just shuffles the content down below, and then you just kind of swipe through it. So the smaller you get with the device, down to a handheld device, it's narrower, but it's readable. You don't need the open it up. So it's a new way of designing websites.
And I think I'd also point out, we haven't talked about it too much, but a lot of parishes and dioceses have email newsletters and things they sent out. Just be aware that 30 or maybe 40% of the emails that people are opening are on a smartphone. So make sure if you have these really nicely designed email templates that these are things that people can actually click on with their little fingers. So just something to be aware of. The growth is really tremendous. We've run over time. Thank you all so much for doing this, for sharing your expertise, sharing your stories. We have a lot of questions that are specifically for each one of you. So if you could share your name and then where people can find you. You don't have to necessarily say your email address, but someplace where they can find out and contact you. Sean, go ahead.
Sean Ater, and you can go to our webpage, which is catholiccincinnati.org. And if you find the Office of the New Evangelization, all of my contact information is there.
Good. Thanks, Sean, for coming. And Cindy, go ahead. Where can we find you?
The Diocese of Fort Wayne South Bend, in the Office of Youth, Young Adult, and Campus Ministry.
And Craig?
Yeah, I do freelance website development and social media help there at craigberrymedia.com.
Okay, thanks. And Patrick, where can we find out about you in Little iApps?
You can go to our website, littleiapps.com. My email is patrick@littleiapps.com. If you've got any kind of questions in regards to mobile development or web pages or responsive web, they can reach us through the website.
Good. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Just a few last words here. If I can find my scripts. I also wanted to point out there's a number of apps we didn't talk about, and I'm sorry I won't be able to read kind of full descriptions of these 2 apps. But here's some examples of organizations that are using mobile to do evangelization, to do catechesis. Focus. We talked about Kevin. We talked from heard from Kevin a little bit earlier, but Focus Equip is a great app for evangelization that Focus is using to reach out to their missionaries. The Steubenville app is being used by youth ministers all over the country. They've got some great video content and all kinds of great content for both of these apps that are, and I think both of these are free as well. So there's lots of other options out there that we haven't talked about that are coming from kind of Catholic organizations as well. So in closing, I just want to say thank you once again to our partners, the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the National Federation of Priest Councils for their partnership, with the continued partnership with this series. You can connect with us on all kinds of different social media networks, the typical places to look. This webinar is being recorded, but if you're here live, it's especially helpful for you because you can see the video feed, but the recording, I'm sorry, you guys cannot see it. But the recording is available at avemariapress.com/webinar-videos. We'll also send a link to the recording tomorrow to your emails if you're attending this webinar. And finally, next week, our webinar series continues on October 8th, 2013 at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We will host Monsignor Stephen Rossetti, well-known author and expert authority on the priesthood, and he'll share his thoughts on the priesthood today. So Monsignor Rossetti is the president of St. Luke's Institute. SLI Connect will be co-sponsoring this presentation. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week, October 8th, on Tuesday.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jared.